Welcome to the Diverse Minds podcast, where we give you the tips, tools, and techniques you need to be a mentally healthy and inclusive leader. Each week, you'll hear about a variety of topics linked to mental health, well-being, and diversity that will enhance both your professional practice and personal well-being.
Welcome to the 284th episode of the award-winning Diverse Minds podcast, and welcome to South Asian Heritage Month, running from the 18th of July to the 17th August each year, with this year's theme being Roots to Roots, R-O-O-T-S to R-O-U-T-E-S. Don't forget the podcast is now fortnightly, but if you're missing weekly content, you have 5 years worth of episodes to listen to. And if you want my handy guide that lists the episodes with a clickable link, you can get it at bit.ly/DMPG23. Now, South Asian Heritage Month seeks to commemorate, mark, and celebrate South Asian cultures, histories, and communities. The month is about understanding the diverse heritage and cultures that continue to link the UK with South Asia. And as we know, South Asian culture in its widest sense has made a significant impact on Britain in various aspects, such as food, clothing, music, words, and the overall feeling of our towns and cities. So it's crucial to allow people to share their own stories, to have time to reflect on their own stories. And this occasion offers an opportunity to showcase what being South Asian in the 21st century entails, while also reflecting on our past and how it shaped us. And if you want to know more about the very first South Asian Heritage Month, why it was set up, do check out episode 49. This year is the 5th year. It launched in 2020. And this year's theme is Roots to Roots, as I said, honouring our journeys, with the whole idea of the fact that each of us carries a unique story shaped by our roots, and the roots, R-O-U-T-E-S, travel to get to where we are. This year, the invitation is to reflect on our journeys, whether from ancestral origins to the path we've taken, or something much more recent, and how these experiences shape our identity today. Now, remember, South Asia in this context is quite broad. It includes the countries of Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, the Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. So each single one of these countries has been hugely impacted by its relationship with Britain, colonial relationship, I'm going to say, primarily through war as well, and ultimately the British Empire, which was a very cruel and extremely extracting regime. So as a result, people of South Asian heritage are a significant part of the British population, with 1 in every 14 people in the country being of South Asian heritage in some way, which is, phenomenal. It's a really high number, and it's really great to know that. And there are key themes within this year's South Asian Heritage Month to explore. So it might be that you are going to whip up something really quickly in your workplace, or you want to join an event, or you're thinking about a particular theme. Of course, you could also use these as prompts or things to think about in your own reflection on identity, because it's kind of a life's work. So one of them is migration and movement. So sharing the stories of our family's journeys from South Asia to the UK, reflecting on the reasons, the challenges, and the triumphs that have marked our paths. Heritage and tradition. So this could be any traditions, languages, customs, rituals that have traveled through generations, grounding our identity and shaping our family, or, family in the widest sense, and communities. Identity and belonging, discussing how our roots, R-O-O-T-S, and our roots, R-O-U-T-E-S, influence our sense of belonging and identity. So what does it mean to many of us to carry multiple cultural identities, and how do they enrich our lives? And I would also add, how do they cause conflict, and how have we worked through that? I think that's a really big one. And even though genetically, or we might have two parents from the same culture, or we might have grown up in a space with a very similar culture, that doesn't mean we don't carry multiple cultural identities. Legacy and future generations. So reflecting on how our personal or family history impacts future generations. How do we want to pass on cultural values, which I think is a really interesting question for those of us who are child-free. Lessons and traditions. Are there ways in which we could do that? That's another element I would add to that. Connection and community. Celebrate the ways in which South Asian communities in the UK build connections through shared heritage, creating vibrant, supportive, and resilient spaces. And roots of influence, highlighting influential figures from South Asian communities whose journeys have significantly impacted society, culture, politics, arts, and sciences. And on that note, I want to say that I had the incredible pleasure of being part of Frameworthy's Change Makers Portrait Reveal. And I met some incredible people who'd been doing phenomenal work within the Midlands region, and the portraits that were revealed. And I was very fortunate to be part of that. But what it really made me realize is, and I knew this anyway, A, how much work I have to do, but B, at the end, I was talking to one of the portraitees, and she said, the media will have us think that it's all really horrible, but there's a lot of good out there, and you've just got to keep going. And it was such an uplifting event. So a really big thank you to Frameworthy for the work and everything they've done around that. It was really wonderful to meet people. And the second thing is that I've shared my own roots, ROOTS to ROUTES. I've been thinking a lot about this and I thought, do I want to put this on the podcast? And I think if you do want to know more, there's two ways of finding out about my own personal journey. One is with Sadia Salam. I did a quick 5-minute video with her. She's doing a whole series. Please do check out her work on the theme of Roots for Roots, talking to a number of South Asian women from various different heritages. And if you listen to the podcast, you'll know I always go on about what's your slice of South Asian culture, because we're not all the same. So I will share that on my LinkedIn, but also do check it out. It's really, really great, the series. And the other thing is episode 41, Genuine Allyship and Racism, where I talk a lot about my own kind of heritage there. So if you want to know more about me specifically, you can check them out. But I really wanted to spend this episode talking about some resources for Roots to Roots, showcasing my favorite things, and also knowing there are a lot of gaps in kind of what I've chosen. So I've looked at different resources that you can use for the month, and those of us of a particular generation, I'm sure they will really resonate with you. But I really hope you're enjoying the content of the podcast and you want to keep up to date. If you are, why not join my bi-monthly newsletter? When you join my mailing list, you'll receive my white paper on inclusive language and mental health at work. And that link is bit.ly/ILMHCK. Okay, so what are the kind of resources that I want to showcase? So it is films, books, TV shows, of which I sadly see they're not many actually in the UK anyway, music and art, and also a couple of podcast episodes I really want to point your attention to. But in fact, if you want to know more about the podcast episodes that I've had over the last, it'll be 6 years, because it includes 2020 to this year. So inclusive, it will be 6 years. I've put the link in the show notes so you can just have a look and see all the amazing episodes. And I will do my best to try and share them on social media as well over the month, 18th of July to 17th of August. So I'm going to kick off with films. And interestingly, I had lots in this category, and I'm not the biggest film goer actually. And I probably should have, you could have billions of Bollywood films on this, and I've only got one. But I wanted to kick off with All We Imagine as Light, which you might have heard of because it won prizes at the Cannes Festival. Payal Kapadia was one of the first, I think the first South Asian woman to be nominated for an Oscar in the international foreign film category, which I thought was insane after all these years. But I thought this was an incredibly powerful film, and I went to see it with a fellow South Asian friend of mine. And interestingly, a majority of the film is in Malayalam, which is a language from the south of India, which I think was brilliant, and added another aspect to it, with smatterings of Hindi and a bit of Gujarati. I think at the beginning, my friend and I were pretty sure there was some. I think this is a really eye-opening film. It's not the usual story. It's very empowered. You can definitely tell there's a female director behind it. And again, it's not with a Western gaze either, which I think is brilliant. 3 different women, 3 different challenges, 3 different complexities, but also a really beautiful film about friendship and sisterhood. So I really love that. And again, you could read reviews about it, but that's one of my, I think, top ones. I think there's also an element of, South Indian women in Mumbai, and also a Mumbai woman being pushed out of her home due to gentrification. So that I think is a really great juxtaposition to show the kind of slices of South Asian heritage within one country, which often we don't really hear about. Even as South Asian Brits, we often know our own slice really well and not other slices very well. The second one was Baju on the Beach, which is, really, really, a classic actually. 1993, 1994. So it had its 20-year anniversary last year, and you might have gone to see it in the cinema because it was touring the cinemas again, which was brilliant. And we went with my book group, and actually I was in hysterics. I'd forgotten how bits of it are not funny at all, and bits of it are absolutely hilarious. Directed by, of course, Gurinder Chadha and written by the incredible Mira Sayal. I would definitely recommend watching that if you haven't seen it, A, and B, if you have seen it and it was many years ago, watch it again. And it really reminded me of what the 90s were like, which might sound like a very stupid thing, but often I think about, why wasn't things like this? Why did we never do this? Actually, the spaces that exist now didn't exist then, and that film really reminded me of what it was like. So many of us will have watched it in the 90s. I was only 12 when it came out, so I really, really, I just, the trip to Blackpool, I was in hysterics at one bit. It just, these South Asian women going to Blackpool and the cultural experience that is Blackpool and how disconnected it is with so much of South Asian culture. Then another film that I really love, and I only just found out Mira Nair is the mother of the mayor of New York, Ramdani. So I couldn't believe that. So incredible if that is your mum. You are so lucky. Monsoon Wedding. I just think it's a brilliant film. And again, it's about wedding, but it's so much more than that. It shows the class stratas. It shows so much about, abuse, what happens, what doesn't happen, what goes unchallenged, the paraphernalia around a wedding. It's a very, very clever film. And then Polite Society by Nida Mansour. I really love that. And if you know Nida Mansour's work, she is, of course, the person behind We Are Lady Parts. So do check out podcast episode 100 on that, 7 reasons why you need to watch We Are Lady Parts, as well. And that was listed as my TV show. One of my TV shows, not exclusively South Asian. There's a lot more. It's more about Islam. It's more about Muslim women, young Muslim women. But I do think it's a brilliant, brilliant watch. And if you're going to access it, why not access it during the month? But Polite Society, yeah, about 2 sisters, the love between 2 sisters. Again, hilarious, but also not hilarious in parts. A lot about martial arts. It's absolutely phenomenal. And then my Bollywood film, which is from 2001, is Lagan by Ashutosh Gowarikar, who is a very eminent director in India and globally. Lagan has actually been showing for several Indian film festivals this summer. It's long, but I think it's just a very clever film about cricket, but mainly about colonialism, the kind of brutality of the British, but very cleverly done, and obviously with song and dance as well. Okay, so now moving on to books, and a book that really, really got me on a visceral level and really helped me understand more about partition, more about what happened, more about why Pakistan was left with very little resources. Just a phenomenal book is Broken Threads by Michal Hussain, which is her family's history through a memoir of her family. So with both sets of grandparents, what happened, one of her grandmothers who is Anglo-Indian, and it does pick up on very different slices of South Asian culture. Obviously what happened in partition, her family, both her granddads were in the army in different ways, and one was a personal secretary to Auchinleck, who was one of the people, very senior in the British administration in India. And the whole paraphernalia and politics around that. And I know she's been touring with her book. I haven't been able to see her. I actually listened to it on audiobook, and she reads it, which I think is really lovely. And in it, she does say, I wrote this book for also people who have questions about partition. Maybe they'll get some of their questions answered. And I definitely had a lot of questions answered. So again, really, really brilliant. And I think, we can read the history, we can read the kind of dry history, but the way she frames it, I think is so helpful through her family and through her lens as well. Then Brotherless Night is the second book. So this is a fiction book, but not really fiction, by Vivi Ganesh Nanthan. So she's a journalist. She lives in the US. She was a journalist. She's also an author. And this book took her, I think, if I quote that correctly, 16 years to write. It's incredibly well researched. It's fiction, but it's not really fiction. It's about the conflict, many parallels with many of the conflicts going on today with Tamil communities. And it really lays out very beautifully kind of what happens in conflict through a family. This is 1 daughter and 4 sons, and the relationship with her brothers, and through the eyes of the conflict, through the lens of the conflict. The genocide, the war, just learnt so much. So that is set in Sri Lanka. Really, really fascinating and a really amazing book. Then the third book on my list is Ministry of Utmost Happiness, of course, by Arundhati Roy. And you might have read The God of Small Things, really famous book, published in 1998. This book was published, I think it might have been 2018. But what again, the parts of this book are really joyous and happy. Parts of this book are not a particularly easy read, but what I really like about it, again, is it showcases things about Kashmir really, really helpfully, the difference between southern India, I guess Mumbai, Delhi, Gujarat, all of those places, and the difference, and underlying the story there is history, the history that underpins it all. And she's just got a new book out actually about her mother Mary, which is nonfiction. So yeah, so really, I think this has educated me quite a lot. My fourth book on the list, which is part of a trilogy, it's the first in the trilogy, and it was published many years ago, and I haven't gotten around to reading the other 2, but it's Sea of Poppies by Amitav Ghosh, who is a Bengali writer. And this book is historical fiction, again, very well researched. shows the brutality of the East India Company. It shows again really clearly the caste system in a very helpful way. And many of the characters get their comeuppance on the journey. It's about indentured and enslaved peoples and slave labor. Just a beautiful, beautiful book. So really love that. And then finally, The World Unseen by Shamim Sharif. And this is a book set in South Africa. And I mean, actually, this book changed my life. I should read it again as an older adult, but as a teenager, it's just a phenomenal book. So South Asians in South Africa, and again showcases the racism there. And it's about a woman who's gay, who's a lesbian, and the trials and tribulations and kind of everything around that. And set in I think the 90s. So again, things maybe have changed, maybe not. Very, very beautiful book. Like I said, one of my very favorite books. So let's move on to TV shows. And I mentioned one, which was We Are Lady Parts, not exclusively South Asian. And I'm just going to pause here and say I'm very conscious that I'm missing many countries. So for example, I don't have anything from the Maldives. And so if you do, please, share that with me if you want to do that. I don't have anything from Nepal either on my list, or Bhutan. So again, these are my kind of favorite resources. I want to reiterate and say this is not the full picture. But of course, nothing would be complete, would it? Especially for British Asians, if it weren't for Goodness Gracious Me. And you can catch snippets and things on YouTube. I'm sure you can get them in different places. But yeah, Goodness Gracious Me, hilarious, brilliant, inspired so many British Asian comedians today. They will all talk about it if you go see Q&As with them mostly. So definitely one to watch. And it will make you howl with laughter. Another brilliant thing from the 90s. So you will if you're from a particular generation, you'll remember watching them when they were first released on the BBC. Okay, then music and art. So wanted to, of course, nothing would, again, as a British Asian, nothing would be complete without the wonderful Nitin Sawhney and also all the people he collaborates with. So, if you go and listen to his music on a platform, if you've got the CDs or if you borrow them, however you do it, you should also check out the people he collaborates with because they're normally really brilliant artists and from a variety of cultural heritages, and that's always worth doing. One of whom, of course, is Shilpa Salik. So she is one of the most prominent British Bangladeshi artists in the UK. So check out her website, check out her Instagram. Really unique sound, absolutely phenomenal person. And yeah, has also worked with Nitin Sawhney. But given that Bangladeshi women are just not represented enough, I really want to give her a big shout out. I don't know her personally, I wish I did, but yeah, wanted to mention her. And then, of course, we have in art, and they just received an honorary doctorate. So huge congratulations to them, the phenomenal Singh twins, who are inspired by miniature art, just a really classic form of, I would say, like Pakistani Northwest Asian art. So it's looking at very detailed small images, although some of their pieces are very big that tell a story. And again, they're very, very clever. So you can see their work on their website. They do have exhibitions originally from Wolverhampton. Absolutely brilliant. And then another artist, a musical artist, is Shumik Datta, and he is touring at the moment as well. So you might be able to catch him. And he plays the Surod, Bengali British artist. Absolutely beautiful, phenomenal music. Really would strongly suggest him. To mix as well between classical and much more modern sounds. And I am one of these people who thinks I adore Indian classical music, and I do really admire it for its complexities, for its ancient essence, for it's very, very difficult to play. But when I try and listen to Indian classical music for more than 10 minutes, I find it really exhausting. So if you're similar, and that's no disrespect, I don't know what it is, I really want to love it. But I can't sit and listen to a whole concert. But Shumik Datta really has a much more modern sound to it. So if that's familiar to you, then maybe you'll also like Shumik Datta too. And then finally, Kawali Orchestra Project, which is a very interesting project, and I would definitely check them out with Rushil Ranjan and Abhi Sampa. And Abhi is Tamil heritage, and Rushil Ranjan grew up in Cyprus. He's South Asian. And interestingly, Kawali is the sacred devotional music for Islam and many Muslims, and that's not their background, and they do really beautiful things with it. And I think with also bringing in orchestral music, which again is very different to Indian instrumentals, but they talk about that in their work. And they do tour from time to time. Lots of concerts in London. I think they recently had one at the South Bank. But definitely check out their music, and it's Sufi devotional music, and I had the opportunity to see them last year. Yeah, they blew me away. So different, I would say very different to pure Indian classical music. But again, I think it's a really great way to showcase this idea of people fitting in boxes, and what they do with the music and respecting the devotional element, even though they are not from the Muslim faith, which I think is, really interesting and great. And then I also wanted to flag 2 podcast episodes. One is episode 51 with Masooda Snaith, as a Bangladeshi writer. And it's called A Writer's Journey. And Masooda talks a lot about identifying as being from a working class family, being Bangladeshi, growing up in a mainly Gujarati area in the East Midlands, and kind of how she's managed to do what she does. Incredible, when the publishing industry is not exactly open to people who share her identity facets. And also podcast episode 121 with Parastro Kalandri, weaving heritage into fashion. So Parastro is from Afghani background, from Afghanistan, and she moved here as a teenager, and what she's gone on to do. And you can also check out her website, Parastro Kalandri, where she has beautiful embroidered garments, corsets, things that are all from her Hazara Afghani heritage. So I really hope you've enjoyed this kind of resource quick tour. South Asian Heritage Month is everyone's history, much like Black History Month. Remember that 1 in 14 people in the UK are connected to South Asian heritage in some way. These resources are my favorites, but I'm aware that there are hundreds out there. So please share yours. And I realize I haven't covered all the countries that cover South Asia. And as my friend Dr. Jonathan Lamptey says, let's move beyond the food, flags and fun and make some tangible changes. So what will that be for your organization? And what do you hope to learn this month and use beyond the month for the benefit of yourself and others? So creating a positive and open environment is not only beneficial for individual employees, but also boosts morale, engagement and retention across the organization. So if you're looking to foster a positive wellbeing culture and would like guidance on creating strategies tailored to your team's needs, Diverse Minds is here to support you. So reach out to explore our training, consultancy and coaching services designed to build a healthy, resilient workplace culture. And don't forget, if you do want to speak of South Asian Heritage Month and you've left it too late, think about next year. And I might have a couple of slots available if you want to pop me an email at Layla, Leyla at diverseminds.co.uk. And I really hope you've enjoyed today's shows and the shows over the last nearly 6 years. So if you have, please leave me a review on Apple or Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast from. Don't forget to check out my TEDx talk, where I talk about the connection between race, culture and mental health. That link is bit.ly/TEDx Wolves, WOLVESLO. And if you like it, please do comment, share and like. And don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook and Blue Sky. And the resources are the podcast episodes. And don't forget to check out the link in the show notes that lists them all. So I really hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope you have a brilliant South Asian Heritage Month, and join me in a fortnight's time where I'll be talking more about South Asian Heritage Month and a particular aspect and how you can get involved. Until then, take care. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you access your podcasts from. You can also connect with me on Facebook and LinkedIn. Tune into next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll bring you more insights on mental health and inclusion. Bye for now.